So this tutorial will be on tips and tricks for doing lines and boxes really rapidly when you're building a process diagram or a network or something like that. It's nice to know a few of these handy tips to make it move smoothly. We're going to recreate what's up here, and I'm going to talk through a few of the things in order. We're going to start off with a square, and I'm going to restyle this square and get rid of the center, the color on the inside. And the first thing is if you were used to mind mapping, you want to quickly make another line directly to a square. Well, what you can do is come to these little blue dots here. I don't actually know what Miro calls them, but I think of them as arrow stem points, because if you click them, you'll begin to build an arrow. If your arrow goes out to the empty canvas, it's going to ask you for what you want to create. So you can add the same object by clicking the top one, which will it'll make a clone of that object, or you can choose, another square or circle or whatever. Obviously, the blue lines are snapping and helping you align, and you can use that same snapping and aligning when you're coming out here. What I'll do sometimes, if I want to make sure that the line is straight, is hold down Shift. When you hold down Shift, you're going to get a snap to a 45-degree line, or a straight line, or vertical line coming off that anchor point right there, anchor point or stem point. So I'll hold down Shift, and that'll get you a nice straight line, and then you don't have to line it up after the fact. You can just cruise right along. So you can get quite a ways really quickly by just using that technique. So so that's one way to get an object, start to build out a network or a flow. The other way is any of these items, you can hold down Alt and drag it to a new location. So once you've chosen kind of your underlying style, maybe of like the box or a corner box or a circle or whatever you think you're going to want to use, and you've colored it and you've kind of gotten it styled the way you want, then you can start kind of cloning out your process really quickly. So you might just say like, okay, I know that there's we're going to branch from here into a one main channel, and then we're going to have this sub channel happening, and it's going to take 3 steps, and the upper one's going to be 3 steps, and then they all come back together. So you can get kind of your basic thing moved out really quickly using Alt. So in this case, what I'm going to show you is Alt. I'm going to kind of bring it down here, and then using that same line stem kind of anchor point there. Once you bring that line into here, you're going to be able to find all these places that line is going to want to bind onto the next one. So it'll snap to the center, and it'll stay on any point. Just because it snaps doesn't mean that's the only way that it's going to connect. It's connected at any point. So if I put it here, we're connected. But if I move it to there, we're also connected, which is super helpful. And not even just on the perimeter, but also inside. It moves along with it, which is really cool. I believe it scales too, which is also super cool. Becomes very helpful, and I'll show you why in a second. Sometimes if you want multiple lines coming in, I'll show you right now. If you want multiple lines coming in to this box, let's say that there's many different boxes feeding many different boxes feeding this box. I want to kind of like see how many processes kind of enter here. It's nice to be able to have some of them, sometimes for them to all kind of index out or sort of like array out themselves here, so you can see all the inputs coming in to the process. Additionally, and I'll show you that in a bit later, bringing things directly into the inside of this this box or whatever it represents and going to a sub item, or recognizing that it comes partway through the time series, that it enters halfway through or towards the end, is also very useful. So being able to pin these arrows into a location on the on another object is really helpful. If you are getting stuck with this snapping, see, I'm trying to get it to, right now it wants to snap to this bottom line. If I can't get it to come inside here, you can hold down Control, and it'll sometimes change your capabilities. It'll actually sometimes, I believe, if you hit down Control, it'll let you land without putting it in the box. So notice how I dropped it there, and it does not bind it. It actually lands in this location, kind of bound to the canvas. This is me holding down Control. But if I release Control, it's going to want to snap into the box itself. And now it's connected. So Control will allow you to drop this arrow not onto the box, unbound. There you go. So let's get rid of a few of these. And that's some of these details about the lines. We're going to do a few more in a second. Once you've gotten to here, you may discover you want to restyle this. Let's review a few of these. It's difficult to select a whole network, and you can't. The styling for the square or the line isn't there because we have this mixed selection. So they offer what's called the filter here. So I can filter to just the shapes. And now I'm just selected on all of the squares, but not the lines. And now I have all the square options here. So I can then change, all of them at once, like so. Can change the opacity and so on. Very cool. And of course, let's do it again just to see the lines. We'll see select, connection line. Now I'm just connected on the lines. And of course, I can change just the lines, make it dotted, change the color, and so on. I'm going to leave it at black and connected, or fully filled in line for the time being. So that's restyling with filter. Shortcuts, I mentioned the Alt drag to make a shape. Other shortcuts that are just super helpful is the pointer, which is what this cursor is now, this tool here. You can see all the shortcuts when you hover over. Templates doesn't have one, but text, shape is S, connection line is L, V, and the hand is H, or when you're on hand, when you're on V, the selection tool, and you hit space, or you hit V again, it toggles between the pointer and the hand. So you can, I often sit with my right hand on my mouse, my left hand over kind of the left side of my keyboard, and I'm on V, and then I'm using spacebar to toggle between V. So if I want to move to a new section, I'm at holding spacebar, and then I'm back at V so I can move things. And then I'm spacebar and I'm move, and I'm V and I'm back. S, draw a square. L, oops. Once you draw the square, you'll need to hit, what do I hit to get out of there? Control enter, enter. Click off of it. Or you hit escape, excuse me. So then, yeah, L is gonna draw a line. Pick a line, so L, H, V, S. You can also find a whole list of all the shortcuts or hotkeys here under shortcuts. So the shortcuts, line stems, we've seen the branching, connecting. Let's do a little bit on these line curves. You'll notice that you may not like the way that, for example, when this gets a little closer, or say that this is here, you might want to curve the line. The way that you do that is as I just did with holding that clicking that blue, these are indicators for new key points. This little guy in the middle is kind of a key point here. I don't know if that's the exact right term, but it's what I'm using. So to make a new key point, you've got options always bisecting the line, so I can always add. And once I've clicked the blue one, it makes a new white one, and then bisects, between these two again. And I now have two more that I can do. So you could keep doing this forever and make a long one. If you don't like a key point that you've added, you can double click it and it'll disappear. Also, these key points, what are nice is they also have these blue snapping, guidelines, so I can align them with either the grid of Miro that you see in the background or with other objects that are out there, which is really nice. And I would recommend trying to, make these lines look as organized as possible, so it's not a total rat's nest, and try to avoid things crisscrossing over each other, or having weird curve radiuses and strange spaghetti action. So I like to use the grid snapping to get things to kind of line up nice. So that's line stuff. Distributing an auto format. So this is really nice. So let's say like we've built our thing here, and it's kind of like all over the place, like so. And we want to kind of line some stuff up. So for example, if I wanted to make this and this line up, you're going to want to use some align left. So I've just selected these two, no lines, so I'm offered the shape options here. Here's the align options. I'm going to go to align left, and it should bring it to the leftmost. And now I've got these things nicely aligned left. If, for example, I grabbed, let's take this group on the top. This one's going to contain this line and this line, so I'm going to have to do filter, go to shapes, and now I have the shape options up here. I'm going to go align, and here I'm going to do align top. So I get a nice straight line there. If it's just one item that you're trying to line up, or you're doing it one at a time, using the blue guides is probably faster than selecting and lining up. So like those two, I was able to line up really quick. Now, another one that's really pretty cool is distribute. So you'll notice that right now, let's call this step one roughly. This is like, call this like stage one, stage two, and stage three. So 1, 2, and 3. If I wanted those to not be, so right now stage 2 is not in the center between stage 1 and stage 3. So how do I get it there? I can use the tool. I'm going to select these. I'm going to use this. First I have to filter, go into shape. And now I have the align. I'm going to come back to align, and this over here on the other side of this little line are your distributes. I'm going to go to distribute horizontally. And what that does is it distributes these things with even steps between them. And so now it is in the center, and it's easy enough to just line this one up with the one before it. And of course I could do the same vertically. I would just need a third thing here. Select these. And this is going to be a small adjustment. Yeah, I just moved it down a tiny bit, and I moved this one into alignment with that, and that line is square. So now I have better alignment, and I would highly recommend this kind of organizing if you're getting to the stage of presenting this, or even just for thinking about it in your own mind. Alignment can make this look a lot less crazy, and plus the actual logic of things maybe potentially starting at the same point in time is really critical. So I would highly recommend alignment. It'll be better received. We'll just say that. It's kind of the diagram equivalent of spell check. And then there's also this feature here, which you may find, I'm not sure when I want to use it, but this is the auto format feature. And it's when you multi-select, you have this thing up here, which will rearrange the array. It's kind of like transpose. It rearranges the array of items from a vertical to a horizontal. And that can be really nice. Experiment with, I don't quite know when I want that in process diagramming, but in fact, I've never tried it on something like all nested like this. No, I don't recommend it on that, but a smaller selection, I think it's a great option. If you wanted these verticals to then turn into straight horizontals, I'd recommend that, but it will leave it like nudged up against each other vertically. So that's just another option. Possibly lastly, this kind of grouping, what we've got going on here with this green is super helpful when you've got like subtasks or tasks. And so my recommendation for doing that is get your container. What's awesome is that Miro handles this really well. And a lot of tools really mess this up, and it makes it a nightmare to try to accomplish this. Let's make our container a little bit bigger than our squares that are going to come in. Oftentimes you won't know what size you need to make this beforehand, but in this case, I'm going to think of it as too high, too wide kind of step with relation to these squares. So I made it about this big. It might need to be a little wider. We'll see. Then I'm going to bring in some items that I want to represent the sub process. And I'm going to do as I've just been doing before and kind of build my my little sub process. And now what I'm actually going to do is group it at this point. So I'm going to select all of these and hit the group or Control G. And then what's really cool is that I can bind these lines all the way into the subgroups, into the sub items of the group, so the elements of the group. So we come across this group hierarchy, which is really awesome. So I can bring this arrow into anywhere in the group or onto any discrete element in the group, which is really great. So now when I move the group around, this whole thing comes with it. So we can do the same here. So that's awesome. And then, of course, once you have a group, double-clicking brings you inside the group into the individual elements. And now I can select the elements, and you can kind of see that the background is slightly grayed. This is now kind of highlighted my group, and I'm able to select the individual elements in the group. And so, for example, I could make this background the background of this sub process like gray, and I could call this finished one, this where everything converges at the end. I'll make that like the heroic end. Okay, so the last thing in maybe a process is like not everything is feed forward. You may have something that's a feedback loop. If I wanted to say take this, let's say even here, let's say our finished one, and I wanted to make a feedback process from it, maybe I can pull that arrow out and link it back up to this one. And now we've got this circle. Once you get here, this starts to look a little strange, right? I don't have any perfect answers for making it look entirely better, other than you may want to at least add one other key point in here, something coming out outside this horizontal line on the edge here, so it gets a little bit more rounded here. What you'll notice is that it ends up being such a long arc. It might be nice if it was a little shallower. Play with this. You will start to find you get a little bit loopy. Um, if other people have precise answers for how to make this a little better, that'd be cool to know. But um, my recommendation is just do your best to get it to not look like a total kind of spaghetti strand. Um, but that looks pretty good. Um, and sometimes, circular, is kind of one thing. You may end up with, there may be places in a process where you may say, oh, well, this is a line of communication, and so we want it to be a bidirectional arrow between them. Always remember you've got the both sides of your arrowheads here, and you may, in this case, if it was information or flow or something, this might be more like the standard for that. So you do a dotted line or something. And in this case, you've got two arrows coming into the same location. It's tough to know if this arrow and this arrow, which arrowhead is this? Does this arrowhead belong to this? Is this a bidirectional arrow, or is this a bidirectional arrow? And in this case, this is where I was kind of describing earlier. It's nice that you can move arrow anchor points anywhere along the perimeter or the interior of any object. So now it's very clear that this is bidirectional and this is not. So that's a great case where you want to be able to move arrowheads, arrow anchor points along an object's perimeter. So I hope that is helpful. I know it's a lot, but I will maybe make an even shorter one in the future. Cool. Hope it helps.